Hey everyone, Wesley here from Seeds of Life, and the first episode of our series, Strange Voices. And today we're going to talk about the voice of shame and guilt. If we look at shame and guilt, it's something we see all the way in the beginning of the Bible. One of the first, you could say, voices that came to mankind after they fell. We see Adam and Eve in the garden, and the moment they sinned, they ate of the fruit. It says that their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked. And the first thing they do is they try to hide their nakedness. So we see here from the beginning, the voice of shame and guilt is rooted in, first of all, in sin. If there's a voice of shame and guilt in your mind, it could be that you are in sin, that there's something that you have rebelled against God, or there's at least this voice saying that you've done something wrong with God. And that makes you, as you see with Adam and Eve, hide yourself. This is something that I have encountered often in my life for myself. That when I notice that I run away from God, when I don't want to come close to God, as we see in the garden, it's often because there is this voice of shame and guilt that has convinced you of something you've done wrong. And sometimes it is because you actually did something wrong and you should bring it to God and in the light. But very often, it's a voice of accusation. As it says, the devil is an accuser. It's his voice that's saying you have no right to be close to God. And the beautiful thing is, in the story of Adam and Eve, we see the first thing that God does, even though he puts them outside the garden, is that he gives them clothing to cover their shame. So he made garments of skin to clothe them. You can see even then, you could say, a sacrifice was necessary to cover their shame, to cover their guilt. Then we come to the second root of this voice of shame and guilt. Could be sin, that you've actually done something wrong, and then you should repent, turn to God. But it can also be the law. If we look at the law is something that convicts of sin. So the law is the thing that is constantly pointing the finger. That's not good. That's not good. You are guilty. Guilt and shame. And it could be that if you are experiencing a lot of guilt and shame in your life, because these can be very powerful motivators, that you are actually running for God or working hard in the church or trying to do good, not be out of love, but because there's this voice in your head that says that you should be doing this to make up for all the crap that you did. So sin is a big reason for shame and guilt. And the enforcer of this is actually the law. Sometimes people think that the law was a good thing, but the law was actually only there to point out sin for us. It pointed out this holy, perfect standard that convinced us and convicted us that we were sinful, that we were guilty. So, as a Christian, as we believe that we have now died to the law, and that we have been cleansed completely by Jesus Christ, Hebrews 10 says that if we believe that one sacrifice was once and for all, if there was one perfect sacrifice for all, then the worshippers would no longer have a consciousness of sin. And if the voice of guilt and shame is very powerful in your life, it's probably because you do have very much a consciousness of sin. There could be real sin, there could be real rebellion, so search your heart. But very often, what we see that Satan does is he brings a case against you, an accusation against you. But it says in Colossians that all those accusations, all that entire list has been nailed to the cross, has been destroyed and wiped out. And if you truly have been cleansed by Jesus, if you believe that his sacrifice once and for always was enough, you will no longer have a consciousness of sin. If you have a debt of $20,000 and that debt has been paid, you no longer should be thinking about those $20,000. And that's how you can attack, you could say, that voice of guilt and shame by looking at the voice that says, it is done, it is finished. Your slate has been wiped clean. So what God confronted me with is that I still walked around with guilt and shame because I could not really see who I had become in Jesus. I did not really dare to look in the mirror, you could say, that James is talking about. Look in the perfect mirror and see I am now clean in Jesus. And if that's you, then I want to encourage you. Look at yourself and consider yourself clean in front of Jesus Christ. Look at yourself and see, what voice do I really believe? The voice that says that I'm guilty, or the voice that says that I'm free? Make sure that you get rid of that strange voice that says you are guilty, for there's a voice of your Maker that now says, if you believe in Jesus Christ, you repent of your sin and accept that sacrifice, there is no more there should be no more consciousness of sin. There should be no more guilt and shame, for you have been accepted in the Beloved, in Jesus. Hope this has been helpful. See you tomorrow for the next episode on anger. God bless.